Our lives are laid out on a road of bumps, turns, struggles, and more. How do we respond? How do we endure adversity for learning and growth? I'm Aubrey Johnson, and we'll explore these questions and more on the Road to Rediscovery. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Road to Rediscovery. I'm your host, Aubrey Johnson. The Road to Rediscovery is about reflecting on life lessons to learn and grow from them, and of course, take it to the next level and help others who are struggling through dark times. Now, as you know, on the Road to Rediscovery, we are very, very passionate about delivering quality content that is of value to you and your personal growth. If you like what you hear, please visit roadtorediscovery.com/donate. That's rediscovery.com/donate. We'll give you a shout out in a future episode. And as always, there is no obligation. We are truly, truly grateful for your listenership. My special guest has made it her life's mission to inspire positive transformation in others from diverse backgrounds to overcome massive challenges and become leaders who plan to change the world. These are people she calls everyday heroes in our backyards. In her own journey, she's overcome the struggle of being diagnosed with chronic illnesses to becoming the thriving entrepreneur, wife, and mother she is today. In serving others, she champions storytelling as a means of growth and healing. Ladies and gentlemen, let's please welcome Seema Giri to the show. Hi, Seema. Welcome to the show. It's so great to have you.
Hi, Aubrey. Thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. So now you work in serving others from a personal sense and a professional sense. Is that right?
Yes, Aubrey. Now I have the great privilege of helping people realize the biggest asset of their life that they have been working for every second creating, and that is their life story. So I help female spiritually aligned women entrepreneurs and a few heart-centered men to really grow their business by leveraging their life story, their journey, and how they're helping others now in excelling in their life.
Gotcha. So, can we take a step back for a minute and just want to ask if you could share your journey, and just give us a synopsis into just some of the challenges you've had with the diagnosis of chronic illness, and then, of course, what inspiring events took place to transform you into storytelling and helping those through storytelling.
Yeah, sure. I'm originally from India, and that's where I was born, but I grew up in Germany and the US. And I came at a time back in the 70s. I'm really giving away my age here, but in the 70s, we were immigrants, and there weren't many Indians here at that time. So it was kind of new. I was a very active child, and I would go and talk to anybody. I would love talking to people and hearing their stories. So it started back when I was, 3-4 years old. In Germany, I was 5 years old, and I would just pick up my bike and just go ride around and talk to people.
Yeah.
And, we didn't know about the stranger danger then.
Right. No, it was a different world then.
Exactly. But being an immigrant, we still had to be careful because there was still a lot of, racism, a lot of discrimination. And so from that point of view and fear of a parent, I was told, Seema, you have to be quiet. You have to stay home. You can't just go off anywhere like that. So from a very early age, I was told that I had to change myself in order to be accepted. And that just continued on throughout my life in different forms, in different ways. So eventually, by the time I was 10, I became a very introvert and extremely shy. Yeah. And I think my illness started back then when I couldn't really be who I am. So autoimmune issues are, Aubrey, I don't know if you know, or the listeners know, that it's really because of not being able to express yourself and not being able to be who you are. generally, right? So I think it started back then when I had to change myself in order to be safe, number one, in order to be accepted in a new environment, and what the societal expectation, cultural expectations were. So when I was in my 20s, that's when I started feeling the symptoms where I was extremely exhausted and I couldn't get up. I was sleeping 16, 18 hours a day and felt like a Mack truck had run over me. And problem with autoimmune issues is that you look perfectly fine from the outside while tsunami is going on the inside.
Oh, my goodness.
Autoimmune issues in the early 90s weren't really an issue. It was a fairly new thing and took forever for the doctors to do the right tests.
Yeah.
11 doctors did their testings that they normally did, but everything came back normal. So they did the next best thing and called me crazy, a hypochondriac. It's all in my head. And that just went on until I went to the 12th doctor and he did a new set of tests and said, yes, Seema, there's something wrong with you. It's not all in your head. That was the happiest day of my life, Aubrey, because I finally had a diagnosis and then eventually went to put me on 30 medications because of the side effects and everything else. And I was diagnosed with fibromyalgia, rheumatoid arthritis, and hypothyroid.
Yes.
But after the birth of my son, I became bedridden. It actually got much worse. They were hoping that it would reverse, the pregnancy would reverse it.
Yeah.
But it didn't. It got worse. So I couldn't enjoy the joys of being a new mom. I couldn't hold my baby, Aubrey. I couldn't cuddle with him. I couldn't caress him.
Oh, my goodness. Yeah.
So at that point, the doctors told me, Seema, this is how your life is going to be. And I just looked at them and I said, I don't accept your diagnosis. I looked at my son and I said, there is no way I'm not going to be there in his life as an active mom and enjoy him.
Yes.
And so he was the catalyst of me wanting to change and finding a different way. Of course, the doctors laughed at me like they laughed at me, before, saying it's all in your head. But I was so determined, Aubrey. I was so determined because my baby didn't just show up, right?
Right.
I had to, we had wanted the baby, we had wanted the child, we brought him into life. So I felt a responsibility to find a way and not just accept what the experts were telling me. I had to listen to my gut feeling, even though my family and friends were like, if these doctors are saying, then that's what it must be true. And I said, no, I didn't accept. So the first thing I did was I decided that I was going to find a way. And then I decided that I was going to be there for my, for my son.
Right.
And then miracles started happening. It's like when when you make the decision, the road opens up. The universe brings to you when you make a decision, right? So it started bringing people who had knowledge of whole food nutrition. Because my doctor said, I asked him, if I make changes in my diet, will that make a difference? And they said no. But that made all the difference. I made major changes in my diet. I was able to exercise again. And, within 4 months of following the right diet, I was able to get up again and take care of myself. Within 6 months, I was holding my baby. And there was a series of other changes I had to make in my life to get to where I am today. But that's how it all started. So sometimes as a mom, as a woman, it's very hard to do things for yourself, but sometimes it is someone else. The love of someone else, or the love of my child was the biggest catalyst that got me to think differently and act differently.
And that's a huge catalyst, right? I mean, your child, your baby, and it sounds to me, Seema, as if there was a strong maternal instinct and obligation that you have felt from the core in not accepting that diagnosis and in doing what was necessary to turn things around. I mean, I'm just trying to put myself in your shoes. On 2 different occasions, you were laughed at by medical professionals. And like you said, in the 90s, you know, such topics like mental health, that wasn't really explored or considered in the medical circles, I guess, at that time,
Mhm.
was just simply written off and concluded as hypochondriac or whatever, you know. And when really there needs to be an effort to dig deeper. It's more commonplace these days now, right?
Yes.
But with what you were up against, not just how you were feeling and the sluggishness and you know the mental strain, but the challenge from those who ironically are supposed to help, you know, and then of course not accepting the diagnosis and not accepting just subscribing to to just being, you know, uh, disabled, you know. It's a true testament to your resolve and your resilience in making this happen and turning things around and transforming. And obviously the love of a baby being there as the catalyst, as you say, definitely played a big part. And in everything that you shared with us here, Seema, I'm hearing self awareness. There was a tremendous amount of self awareness that you have to have to realize your current condition and where you are now or where you were then, and to understand the road and the path that you have to take once you make that decision to turn things around. There are some things, of course, you didn't know until you came up a little closer to it on your journey, but you stayed tenacious and stayed the course. It sounds like so. That's a lot to contend with, and to come out on the other end thriving is a true testament to your resolve. So I want to appreciate, I want to thank you, and I appreciate you sharing that insight with the listeners of what you've gone through in your journey.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I really feel compelled to be sharing this with people
Hmm.
because people don't realize. And I think at that point also, Aubrey, was that I'm a woman. And at that time, the attitude was like, women complain a lot. They say things, they
Yeah,
want
yeah.
attention. This is a way of trying to get attention. And and then I was told to just suck it up. Everyone has issues.
Mm.
So it becomes really difficult when people around you are like that. But
Hmm.
thank goodness that God has put that gut instinct within us, and we have to. That voice was so low, but it was so persistent that I had no choice but to listen to it. That told me to keep going.
Yeah. Absolutely. That faith, right? And you may not see the end result, but you know the end result will be in your favor, and that's why you stay the course. And I wanted to ask you. I mean, you know, I know you're married, and at the time you were going through this, you were married. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And so, uh, at any point, did you feel like you had nowhere to turn, or you were just all alone because these professionals are telling you one thing, and you know there's got to be something more than what they conclude? And I'm sure your husband has had, you know, the fullest, has provided the most support and everything. But I'm asking this question for the benefit of the listeners who go through similar struggles, who do feel alone, you know,
Yeah.
and if there's any insight in helping the listeners understand that with their struggles, they are not alone, that you can share any insight that you can share based on your experience, I think would be quite helpful.
No, definitely. My pleasure. Yeah, Aubrey. I had a very supportive family.
Hmm.
My father he's a scientist, so there was a scientific background there.
Hmm.
My mom was very supportive. My husband was very supportive, right there
Great.
by my side with everything. Friends that were supportive. But when you have these conclusive tests coming back,
Hmm.
and the doctors saying, we've done the investigation and this is what's coming up, so um, this is our professional diagnosis, that
Hmm.
this is what it is, and sometimes people want attention and
Hmm.
these kind of things. Um, they have no choice but to go with that. It's logical, right? We go through our logical minds, like, okay,
Yeah.
you know, 1 + 1 is 2, 2 + 2 is 4. So if these things are happening, you know, then so so even though they were supportive, I still felt very alone because, you know, look at my background. At that time, I have an arranged marriage. We're Indian, so at that time we followed that. I had an arranged marriage, so my husband only knew me for 2 years.
Mm.
He didn't know how tenacious I was or how I was in the past, but my
Right.
parents knew, right? They raised me. They know how I am. They know I don't say things just to say things. They know that
Right.
I don't just start saying I'm sick just to get attention. So
Right.
that was really hurtful. It's like, hey guys, you know who I am. This is not how I behave. You
Right.
should know, right?
Mm-hmm.
But and I think in your journey, when you're going through this, we all have a journey to go through.
Mm-hmm.
And if my family, at one point, if they hadn't said, you know, if the doctors are saying this, it must be right, so you just need to get over it, or you just need to know how to handle things better. I think at that point I was meant to be alone. Like, we were all supposed to be meant to be going down that path to a certain level, to a level that you feel so alone, so that you can rise from there. You know what they say, that
Mm-hmm.
once you hit rock bottom, there's only one way to go, and that is up. But
Yes.
sometimes, in order to have that determination that I had, you know, we hear stories of mothers raising the car to protect their child.
Yes.
That was a kind of strength, but I had to be in that kind of position in order to be able to do that. Had I had that support from my family from the beginning, maybe that wouldn't have happened. And of
Mm.
course, hindsight is always 2020. You
Right.
can only, like Steve Jobs says, you can only connect the dots when you move forward and look back.
That's right.
So at that time, it felt really bad and hurtful. But
Mm.
if I can just give this one solace to your listeners, is that everyone does the very best that they can. No one is intentionally trying to hurt you.
So
My
true.
husband and my family didn't intentionally want to leave me there by myself. They were doing all that they could.
Yeah.
But in my journey, I still felt that way, because if I hadn't, I probably wouldn't have known the courage and the strength that I had on my own.
You know, that is a tremendous perspective that you are offering to the listeners. And I want to thank you for that, because in so many past conversations that, you know, that I've had with other guests, as well as, um, you know, my solo episodes where it's just me, you know, we've always talked about, you know, whatever you're going through, someone has gone through it before. You're not alone. There is hope, and those sorts of things. And I truly believe that. However, the insight that you shared, Seema, it suggests that, yeah, you may not be, you know, you're not alone, but you may not feel that you're not alone at that time, that rock bottom. And sometimes it takes us to feel as if we're all alone to realize that we have to do some work to get out of that rock bottom, to get out of that rut. And that's a hard look in the mirror that one has to take, but a much necessary one, just as how you've done, as well as hold yourself accountable to get yourself in the condition to where you can be an active parent to your son.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Amazing. Amazing. Thank you for sharing that insight, Seema. I really, really appreciate it. So, in working with your clients, whether it's on a personal level or a professional level, and we're going to dive into the storytelling and just giving us some examples in how you coach others to leverage their stories for their growth and development. If you can just share with the listeners in one sentence, if you could just summarize into one sentence, what is the core primary message you want people to get from their story?
Number one, that they have a story. Many people, many of the clients that I've worked with, Aubrey, the first time authors, they didn't even realize that they had a story. Many people feel that you have to have a tragic story to have a good story. And
Oh,
we
yeah.
start with the label business, right?
Yeah.
So they say, if I don't have a tragic story or a story of, a tragedy to transformation or trauma to transformation to triumph, then, my life doesn't have that meaning. So I say it's not about labeling good or bad.
Right.
If you're alive and you've lived a certain amount of years, you have your story, and your story matters. They equate that to them not matter,
Yes.
that they don't matter, and you matter. Just because you're on earth, you're born, you matter, and your story matters. We're here for a reason.
100%. Absolutely. Yeah. We all matter, and
Yeah.
everyone has a story, for sure. Awesome. Beautiful. So when it comes to, let's say, being a parent, okay. And I'm trying to see, when it comes to how you approach showing and coaching others in leveraging their story, right? For me to understand, I have to go back to childhood. So as a parent, at least in my experience as a parent, there's been times I found myself when my son was young, in telling telling him a story. Okay.
Mhm.
And that story may involve, me when I was his age, or it may be someone else. Um, and usually the primary purpose of that story is to convey a moral or a message that is learning a life lesson, and of course, we've shared funny stories and goofy stories too, but a lot of these stories were, there was a moral or message behind it to teach and guide as a parent, which is our job, for our children. So that's what we want them to learn, that moral or message. Conceptually speaking, is it similar to the storytelling in your work with adults?
Yes, yes. So my
Okay.
clients, they write transformational business books.
Hmm.
Most of the people who have gone through transformation, probably you too, Aubrey, we go into the line of work we're currently in is because we have walked those steps, we have walked those journeys, we figured it out, we
Yes.
figured how to come out through the tunnel, see the light, and
Hmm.
we want to help others do the same and potentially save them 15 to 20 years of suffering. So the
Right.
more we help each other in the world, the more the world heals and becomes a better place for our future generation. So
Hmm.
they write their transformational journey, where they were, what they were going through, just like I shared today. What
Hmm.
are the steps that they've taken, and and they share actionable steps that their clients can take or the reader can take immediately, so they feel like, okay, I can do this.
Yeah.
And then they showcase how they can help them if they want to work deeper, how they can do that, how they can work with them.
Hmm.
So it really is a great tool to share the journey and give tools and tips on how others can get through as
Hmm.
well as positioning themselves as the authority in their field, because
Yes.
it positions them as the expert that they are, and many people get to build that know, like, trust factor, because I do a ton of research with whichever mentor that I want to work with, and
Hmm.
I like to see what they're about, but you can't always have an interaction with them. A book gives a greater detail of their journey. I get to know what they've done. I get to experience how they are, because you really get to understand that through their book. You get to hear their voice and see if I can actually relate with them.
Mm.
When I've seen their history and how they've gotten themselves to where they are today, it motivates me even more to do that.
Amazing.
And this way you
Wow.
can reach all levels of clients, because there are people out there that just can't afford you.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, there are.
Yeah.
And my goodness, I mean, it sounds like the journey that you take them on is totally comprehensive. I mean, there's a lot involved. As they're writing, I'm sure there's some reflection that they're doing mentally, you know, and on their own path, you
Oh,
know.
yes.
Yeah.
So many of my clients have already had a transformation to a certain
Hmm.
level. That's why they're in the business that they're in. Most of them
Hmm.
are coaches, mentors, and
Hmm.
speakers.
Hmm.
And but when they've go through this writing experience with me in writing their book, I do collaboration books, which is multi-author books, where they write a
Yep.
chapter, as
Hmm.
well as helping them write their solo books. When they're working with me, they ascend to the next level of their own transformation,
Hmm.
even by writing a chapter.
Hmm. Hmm.
With my background, as I had my own healing journey, I've learned energy healing. I've learned different energy modalities.
Yeah.
So through that, depending on where my author is stuck, sometimes when they're going through their transformational journey, they too get stuck. So I'm able to help them walk through that and help them get through that block. It's not just a writer's block. It's about the next level of journey that they have to have in their own transformation, so they can write their chapter or write their book, so they can serve their clients even better.
I see.
95% of my authors have had that next level of ascension in their transformation.
95%. That is absolutely amazing. It really is. So I guess that leads me to ask, in the great work that you're doing, Seema, is there a common revelation or theme that you hear from your clients in their experience in working with you?
Yeah, so one is acknowledging that they have their story,
Hmm.
um, and realizing that they don't have to reach the end destination to be able to help others. They can
Right.
be
Right.
5 to 10 steps ahead of them and start that journey. So many people try to wait till they lose 100 pounds, or till they have what they think they want to have, but
Hmm.
before they can do anything. So they realize that that journey, that desire that they have in their heart to help others, can start much sooner. Their story is incredible, and that through their story, they can really help others, even if they don't do anything else but just share their story.
Right. Right. Yeah. Oh, that can help a tremendous amount of people. That can help um, so many different people, you know, just by sharing, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and it will resonate and click with someone, you know, that could be the catalyst to their transformation.
Right. And I feel like I'm actually creating a movement of getting the conversation started. Let's get the conversation started where
Yes.
we are not talking to one another from our heart. That's why you've seen lately, especially during the pandemic, of the increased hate crimes that has happened.
Yes.
Because we're not understanding, we're not opening up our hearts. So when you open up your heart and you listen to someone else's story, you'll see that we just have colors on the outside to differentiate each other, and so it's not boring, right? Otherwise it'd be so boring.
Oh, I would.
But
Yeah,
deep down inside, we're all the same. We all
we
want to
are.
be seen, known, and heard, and acknowledged.
Acknowledged. Acknowledged. That is one operative word for sure.
Yeah.
Acknowledged. So now I want to see if we can maybe talk about the relationship, if any, or connection, if any, between, say, um, you know, when you have one person or a client, okay, um, we have different facets of our lives, right? So, like me, Aubrey, there is the corporate business Aubrey, there's the home personal life Aubrey. And so, in coaching or in working with someone in the professional business sense, in understanding their story, with the goal of creating growth for their business or getting from the red into the black and that sort of thing. Um, are there any experiences that you've had with your clients in the business sense to where those were like transferring skills or transferring applications where the lessons learned from understanding their story to help them in a business sense can be applied at home in the personal space of their lives? And I understand everyone's circumstances are different, so it may not apply in every scenario. But does something like that happen, or can something like that happen?
Yeah, because the main thing that I teach, Aubrey, is to be authentic,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
So you can be authentic in personal life, in
Mm-hmm.
business life, right?
Mm-hmm.
And to know who you are, accept yourself as you are, and be authentic, and come from a place of from your heart, right? So
Yeah.
you can bring that warmthness. You can People appreciate when you're being you, when you're
Yes.
not trying to put on a mask of trying to be what other people think you should be.
Mm-hmm.
We're always trying to prove ourselves to others. We're always trying to you know, lead up to their expectation. We all have expectations of each other, from each other.
Right.
But if we can bring it down to, being authentic into who you are, and you making those choices that make
Yes.
you happy, that
Yes.
makes you, to the core.
Mm-hmm.
When
Mm-hmm.
you start making those choices, it affects you 360 in all your life, and actually it gets better. You have to drop the labels, drop the mask, and sometimes you may have to change the people in your life. Like Jim Rohn says, see who the
Sure.
top 5 people are. So
Mm-hmm.
sometimes it's making those real difficult choices. And I call remove, reduce, or realign yourself. You might have
Yes.
to remove those people or habits. You might
Mm-hmm.
have to reduce the things that you can't remove,
Yes.
to the frequency.
Mm-hmm.
And if you can't remove, like children, you can't remove them, you can't reduce your frequency with them. They're with you for life. So you realign your perspective
Mm.
with those kind of situations, whether it's people, whether it's things, whether it's the circumstances.
Right.
When you change your perspective and you
Mm-hmm.
think from a different way, then it's easier to manage those things. So I think that goes whether it's personal, business, relationship, anything.
Gotcha. Gotcha. And I agree completely. I mean, because we are one person, and any negative circumstances or any bad comments or words that play in our heads, that can affect us 360, right?
Yeah.
And 360 representing every facet of our lives, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Awesome. Awesome. Thank you for sharing that, Seema. So I want to ask you if you could again summarize into a sentence. Um, I would love to know, and I've just started asking my guests this. I would love to know if you could summarize into a sentence, what is your road to rediscovery?
Taking my power back.
Beautiful. Taking your power back. I love it. I love it. You know, so few words, but it says so much, you know. Yeah, it truly does. So, Seema, how can the listeners connect with you, learn more about the great work you're doing, and maybe even, I don't know, have a consultation and connect with you in that way?
Yes, I do 30-minute free consultations. I call it break free sessions. I would be
Hmm.
happy to have that with anyone.
Hmm.
And there's a really simple website, www.seema, SEEMA
Hmm.
dot VIP.
Hmm.
And that has all my contact information, all my social media links.
Gotcha. Okay. So it's Seema. I'm sorry. Is it Seema.vip?
Yes.
Okay, got it. I will make sure and include that link in the episode show notes so that while the listeners are listening to this wonderful conversation, they can click that link and connect with you simultaneously.
Yes.
Oh, beautiful, beautiful. Seema, I want to thank you so much for coming on the show, sharing your insights. I've captured a few really, really good anecdotal pieces of information from what you've shared today, particularly with, the need to feel alone for a brief period that helps in turning things around. And there's several other really good insights that you've shared with the listeners as well. So I want to thank you so much for coming on the show. We really appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Aubrey. Thank you for allowing me this opportunity to serve your listeners and you.
Oh, thank you. We appreciate you coming on the show. And I want to thank all of you for tuning in and listening. And hey, look, if you have a loved one or a coworker or a colleague or a good friend who they seem to be really down and out and they're not really themselves, they may be getting tied up in things that are unusual, for their personality and persona. Maybe they're at the end of their rope, not quite sure where to go or where to turn to, whether it's addiction or just bad habits, alienating themselves from family and so forth. I humbly ask that you please share this show with them, because on the road to rediscovery, there are two things we want our listeners to know. Number one, you're not alone. And number two, there is always hope. The road to rediscovery, it's a movement, a revolution. And guess what? You are now part of it. We're all roadies on this journey of life, and it sure feels good having you on the road with me. Thanks again for listening. We'll chat again soon. We really hope you enjoyed this episode of The Road to Rediscovery. We'd love to hear from you. Shoot us an email at roadtorediscoverypodcast@gmail.com and leave us any questions or comments you may have. The Road to Rediscovery is an AJ Shark production.